now call the Ways and Means meeting to order. Sharita, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Yes, sir.
Present. I thought you were gonna unmute everybody.
Alderwoman Howard,
Present.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Present.
Alderman Muhammad,
Present.
Alderman Odenberg,
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Here.
Chairman Vollmer,
Present.
Alderwoman Pam Boyd. 10 present.
All right, 10 present. We have a quorum. At that point, we will make a motion to approve the meetings of yesterday's gathering for the Ways and Means.
So moved.
Second.
Entertain a second. All right, Sharita, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderman Odenberg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Chairman Vollmer.
Aye.
I didn't get Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
10 aye votes.
All right. Thank you. With that, we approve the minutes. We'll hold off with excuse Alderman until the end of the meeting. And with that, today, we have flip-flopped our guest for today. Instead of starting with the sheriff, we'll be starting with the circuit attorney's office. They requested this because they apparently have an 11:30 meeting. So at that point, if we have the circuit attorney's office online, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I would like to read a short prepared statement before I answer any questions. Currently, we are experiencing an unprecedented time in our history. The global pandemic caused by COVID-19 has forever changed our lives and the way we conduct business of the government. Working with our criminal justice partners, primarily the courts, the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department, we have taken a number of measures to ensure the safety of the general public, as well as the Office of the Circuit Attorney's employees. In early March, at the very beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, my office convened with representatives from the courts, the police department, the Department of Corrections, the Missouri Public Defenders, the city's health department to work together to address the required changes in a way we conduct business in light of the COVID-19 virus. In coordination with the stakeholders, we immediately began operating our core functions remotely. We removed our warrants office to issue state criminal charges to remote operations. With the help of Chief Hayden, we have also made possible conducting preliminary hearings remotely. We have created the ability of all of our interactions with the courts, the defense bar, law enforcement agencies, and other criminal justice stakeholders we have conducted remotely. As a result, we have dramatically increased the use of our internet infrastructure and information technology with using both video and audio-based teleconferencing. We continue to move forward to resolve cases and hold individuals accountable. The reality is that over 96% of our cases that we adjudicate do not go to trial. That being the case, we continue to effectively provide justice on behalf of the residents of the city of St. Louis. And some of our COVID-19 measures include the release of low-level nonviolent offenders held pre-trial who have not been found guilty of a crime that did not pose a safety risk to the public. This response was a critical measure to lessen the jail churn that can lead to the spread of the COVID-19 virus to other inmates, jail staff, their family members, and could ultimately spread to the community and general public. My office repurposed a mobile app. We won the Amazon's Big City Idea Challenge to assist in COVID-19 testing, contact tracing throughout the St. Louis regions, our state, and now nationally. Outside of COVID-19, the Circuit Attorney's Office continues to work to make our city safer by using the budgeted resources to address the root causes of serious and violent crime. For example, for victims of crime, we offer on-site trauma-informed counseling to victims of domestic and/or sexual assault while still being offered remotely in light of COVID-19. Established the first dedicated domestic violence and sexual assault fund, which provides relocation funds as well as assistance to gift cards to victims so they have the resources to escape further harm. Provide counseling inside the office victims of sexual and domestic violence immediately after police refer the case, eliminating weeks of wait time, connecting victims to an advocate immediately upon intake so that victims can stay informed about the criminal justice process, have a means to express concerns and preferences, and begin developing a trusting relationship with the member of the Circuit Attorney staff. Launched an outreach campaign during the COVID-19 lockdown for victims of family violence so they would know and seek help from the police and the Circuit Attorney's Office if they're trapped at home with an abusive partner or parent. In an effort to continue to strengthen communications with the police department, established the first ever police liaison position. We created a conviction integrity unit to review claims of innocence, to fight the exonerated, the wrongfully convicted. We are currently fighting in the Supreme Court of Missouri for the release of Lamar Johnson, a man who spent decades in prison for a crime with the overwhelming evidence to suggest he did not commit. To supplement the on-the-job training acquired by attorneys that we have been the primary means of training for decades, the office worked with local and national experts to design and deliver the first comprehensive training curriculum for all of our attorneys that was delivered earlier this part of January. In closing, I'm honored to serve the people of the city of St. Louis as the Circuit Attorney with the monumental task of increasing safety and overall well-being of the residents of our city. Thank you, and I'll entertain questions.
Thank you very much for the statement. So there'll be no request or as pertaining to the budget?
Well, currently we were asking, there were some issues in the budget that we're asking for. Let me get that.
Well, could we go through, if we could, ma'am, Circuit Attorney, if we go through any things you're going to be asking for before we start asking questions, let's put on the board what you'll be requesting, if we could.
We're going to be asking for, of course, increased infrastructure for internet and computer capability in light of the COVID-19. That's going to be a crucial infrastructure to our office. We're going to be asking to replace investigator car that was totaled, which is desperately needed.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you give dollar amounts or approximate dollar amounts that you were requesting? What we're doing here is ways and means and numbers. So if there's dollar amounts you're asking for, we'd like to have those put before us. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to refer to my chief of staff because I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Yeah, we would like to have the numbers. Thank you.
And I can get back to you with those numbers to be sure.
So they're not available today?
Not at this time. It's not in front of me, but I can get those to you.
Well, the purpose of our, us gathering is you've been given a budget from Paul Payne and to see what your office needs to work, if you can work within the means of the budget he's given you. If not, then we need to know what you would like to add or subtract or what we can do to help you out with your budget. So we need numbers. I can't just say we'd like to have a car, we'd like to have this, but we need figures. Is there any way of getting those figures today?
I can give you those figures today.
Yeah, they were.
How soon?
Secretary Attorney, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Those numbers were previously provided as part of our budget, so we do have them. They're just not in front of us. So we can give them today.
We don't have them with us. This remote setting is making it difficult for all, but we would, request some numbers from you so we could do our job here and try and help you out.
We understand. We will provide them today.
What time today? Because we have this meeting, then we have, after you, we have the sheriffs. We just, will you be able to provide them at this meeting?
At this time, we do not have them in front of us. As you speak, we can go ahead and start trying to locate them because like you, we are remote. And we
I
believe that you
understand,
had
but
them in front of you.
we're really here to discuss budget. So if you don't have numbers, we're kind of twiddling our thumbs here. So when you say today, if not, we can reschedule for tomorrow after we have the treasurer's office in, but we need to have, if Madam Vice, if you feel are these the things we need today, do we not?
Mr. Chairman and Honorable, I would like to make sure that we do have the numbers. One of the things that we do know is the budget is extremely distressed. And if we don't have absolutes in front of us, we cannot fairly be subjective to what is needed. And so if it's possible, I'm not sure if you could text someone. I don't know if you're near a computer where they could email it to you, but it would be helpful if we could get it as soon as possible.
All right. Thank you, Madam Vice.
Can I ask a
I
question?
understand.
One second, Joseph. What we're trying to do is, we have you on schedule till 10:50. Do you feel you can get the numbers, any numbers of any sort to us before 10:50?
Yes, yes, as I shared, we previously provided them as part of the budget. We weren't aware that the committee would not have them. And so we're working to pull, yes, we're working to pull them up as we speak.
If we could,
yes.
Because any questions are just going to be running around and around in circles because we don't have specific numbers to talk about. If you can maybe, when you say computers, is there any, do you have a ballpark in the top of your head we could discuss for these items? If you could, you mentioned computers, you've mentioned a vehicle. Do you have round numbers that we could, tighten up after you get your information?
Well, for example, we requested $100,000 for the legal fund, and that is important because we have to defend suits that we are sued in. And so that's one of the requests that I have off the top of my head that we requested. So $100,000 for the legal fund. That's one number. I don't want to get into specifics of the others because I don't have those on top of my head, but I can get those soon.
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yes, Alderman Bakari, you may.
This is a budget meeting. If you're happy with your budget, then there's no need to go on. We're here to see if you're happy or not happy. But this is not a public safety meeting. We will have one of those to talk about the release and all that, and that'll come up shortly. But if you're happy with your budget, we can just move on because most everybody else comes prepared to say, gee, this is in our budget that we're not happy with, and we'd like you to try to fix. But if you're happy with your budget, we don't need numbers.
Alderman Carl, I was talking about what I need to fix, but you guys asked for specific numbers that I don't have. So you stopped me from going
if I
through
may interrupt
those
again,
specifics.
Madam Circuit Attorney, this is a Ways and Means hearing. We only hear about numbers. That's all we care about. We're not here to discuss any of the operations. We're here to discuss how to budget your office. A budget meeting requests numbers. If I could, I see Alderwoman Hubbard has her hand raised. So please, Tamika, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and thank you, Ms. Gardner, for coming. In light of, I guess, this mishap some type of way, if we have time allotted to 10:50, could she just explain what those increases will be or what she actually needs? And then maybe by that time, because I'm sure if it's a published document somewhere, they're probably just trying to find it. And it's unfortunate that we don't have it right now. But since we're still within our window, can she just explain what the needs are and why they're important? And then once we get those numbers in the allotted time frame, then we could move forward. And so we can have all of the knowledge. But I think we don't want to lose this opportunity. Our schedule side, we don't have a lot of time for her to come back. So It's
Sure.
10:16, Mr. Chairman. If she could just explain, and then hopefully her staff can get it to us.
I agree. And I have two more committee members who want to weigh in. Alderwoman Howard, you had your hand raised also. Please unmute yourself, Alderwoman.
Ms. Garner's not visible. I don't know if there's something wrong here.
I don't know if she's on a phone connection or not. So it's the photo doesn't bother me. The fact that there's no
I just
numbers.
was wondering if she
Okay,
was
all right.
aware of that, she's not
Okay.
visible.
All right.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, and I agree with the Alderwoman Hubbard that maybe we should just get her needs.
I am very open to that, but wait, one
Okay,
more
and then
committee
we
member
need
wanted to
money.
weigh in. All right, Alderman Muhammad.
Thank you.
John, you want to weigh in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that if time allots, are we allowed to just revisit the circuit attorney later on today? I believe
Well,
that
I don't know how your schedule is. We have the sheriff's department at, we're here. She's been given a time, as every other department has been given a time for a Ways and Means hearing. We will give her till the sheriffs will give her till 10:50, 11 a.m. to get her numbers. We will let her discuss the things. If she has just discuss what she's wanting to do as Alderwoman Hubbard's requested, that's fine with me. But we will need numbers to see if we can move forward. So
This is Serena, if I may.
this is who's speaking, please.
This
My
is
first
Serena
assistant.
Wilson Griffin, the first assistant, if I may.
All right, thank you.
All right, perfect. So for the cost of the vehicle, the number that we previously submitted was $25,000.
Okay, in the original, you submitted 25,000 for a vehicle. Okay,
Yes, that is correct.
is that's your additional money you're asking for a vehicle?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, we mentioned computer updates. How is there a dollar amount of? Again, we're not going to tie it to what you're mentioning now. If the numbers are within 10, 15,000, $20,000, we just want to get some sort of ballpark so we can, help, try and help.
I understand. So for the computer infrastructure lease upgrade, we requested initially $250,000.
So an additional 250,000. Okay.
That is correct.
Okay. Are there any other? We have $100,000 approximately for legal funding, 25 for vehicle, and 250,000 for computer infrastructure. Is there anything else that you were requesting?
Madam Secretary, did you have any other items?
And we were removed two attorney two positions, so we were asked for that to be restored.
Okay, we have a little feedback problem there, so if someone can take care of that. So there are two positions that were taken away. You're asking those to be restored, and what is the funding required for those two positions?
Serena Wilson Griffin.
Yes. So they were. Can everyone hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, those were two attorney two positions. We were initially allowed at 5.5, and it was taken down to 3.5, which means 2 were removed.
Okay, so that's
Pardon?
350. When you say 3.5, that's $350,000. Or when you say
No.
3.5, 5. Well,
So I'm looking at the budget documents provided by the city,
Okay.
and it says the current authorization is 5.5. Initially, that's what we've previously had in the past. And so for
Okay.
fiscal year 21, the new proposal was 3.5, which reduces us by 2.
Okay.
And so if we were given the 5 that we initially have always had and requested, the amount would have been $376,102. And now
Okay.
the projected amount is $246,102 because
Okay,
2
so
positions were removed.
you're asking an additional $133,000 approximately to fund those 2 new positions. And have those positions, how long has those positions been vacant? Have they been?
I'm sorry, repeat.
Are those positions been vacant for some time?
So
No.
those are attorney 2 positions. I can't say that they've been vacant for some time. We do have openings in the attorney 2 slot, yes, but those are needed positions.
Okay, so do we have any other funding items that you're requesting?
So right now, those are the things that we're asking, which is about with the 250,000 for computer upgrades and security infrastructure, 100,000 for legal services, That's 350,000, 25,000 to replace a car, which is used for serving. We serve our own subpoenas for trial. So that's 375,000 plus the 2 additional positions, which would be an additional $200,000. So that's about 575,000.
Okay, well, that's, all right, well, that's all we're requesting at the end of your statement. So if, are there any other items before I open this up to questions?
Excuse me.
One question, Madam
Yes.
Secretary, if I may.
Yes.
I didn't recall hearing you mention the PPE that will be required in light of the COVID pandemic.
Yes, and we're also requesting additional funds for providing our office with personal protective equipment. We are essential service, we were essential workers, and that equipment has not been provided, and we are paying out of our own existing budget for those resources.
Okay, is there a figure, again, if you don't have a round figure for that, so we can open discussion?
$10,000.
Okay, so it seems that we're at a little under $600,000 is what you're requesting for everything. Is that correct before we open up?
That's for these services.
585,000.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Ms. Serena.
Yes, sorry, Secretary. I was saying with the addition of that number, it takes us to 585.
Yeah, I was just saying around, again, until you get us the firm numbers, that's fine. 585, a little under 600,000. So if these are the items, what I will do is we're going to go by seniority for you're not familiar with it. And we'll open up with Vice Chair Alderwoman Davis. You're free to discuss these requests with the Circuit Attorney's Office.
The items that were requested, I wanted to ask a question. Your supplemental funds that you receive annually, I think this will be your 3rd year. You probably won't receive as much as the previous 2 years at $1.5, $1.7 million, probably closer to 1.2 this year. Could these items be taken care of with those funds?
The additional 1.2 are for salaries and some actual roles that we have in our budget. So this was more for salary increases for across the board staff, as well as a couple positions that we have on this additional, you're talking about the Prop P money?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, we cannot utilize $250,000 for computer upgrades for that, because we have dedicated positions for those funds. And so
we provide the funds in your budget for your positions.
But there's additional positions they put on Prop P funding. Is that correct, Ms. Serena? Just to make sure I'm saying this right.
No, we had no strings attached to those funds.
So if I may, this is Serena. In the previous budget year, when we requested funding for 2 positions, those were put onto Prop P. What was done this year is, rather than putting it on Prop P, they put them on 1010, which is the main account, but they removed 2 attorney positions that we have historically had and have staffed. And also what they did with respect to Prop P, if you notice on 1010 per the budget documents, a lot of the stuff that are directly attributable to employees, such as workers' comp insurance and et cetera, was underfunded on 1010 with Prop P funds projected to make up the difference. And that is what the Circuit Attorney is referring to.
I'm not gonna ask any more questions because that explanation doesn't fit what I know and understand of budgeting and the Prop P funds, how they are allocated and how you have the privilege of allocating them. And so this is our 3rd year talking about the same thing, and I just don't understand it. So I'm going to wait and see what else comes out of our conversation. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice. Alderman Vaccaro, you have any questions of these requests? Thank you.
Just a few comments. One, I mean, I got the budget book in front of me and I'm going through it the best I can, as quick as I can. And it seems to me that there has been an increase in your, for employees. So I guess they got the raise that all the rest of the city employees got, the 1.5%,
Yes.
because it shows that your budget is higher. As I flipped through this, and I was trying to do this as I was going through this, it seems to me, and I know that, I think it was liquor, trying to remember, also felt they needed cars, but were able to find a used car through the police department. Have you researched getting a car from other parts of the city?
That amount is for a used car.
Well, okay,
We
so
only get used cars
so-
from the city.
okay. And then how many open positions, and otherwise I can look through this and come back. How many open positions do you have right now? Circuit attorneys that have not been hired? I believe it's quite a few.
Actually, we currently have 39 attorneys and we're slotted for 53. And we
So-
currently have about 44 that are going to be 44 total. There's going to be hired soon because they accepted offers.
But
We have a total of 44 positions out of 53.
but they're funded already in this budget. I mean, that's what I'm looking at. And it doesn't show what you're gonna do. It does show what you have, but you're funded, fully funded for the 53. So, you know, that's extra funds that you have. I mean, I'm trying to look through this. This budget year,
Can I ask you, what do you mean by extra funds?
Yes,
you're funded for all these employees. You're collecting money for the employees that you don't have. In other words, we're not only paying you for the 33 attorneys you have, we're paying you for the full group of circuit attorneys.
I want to
So
clarify that it's 39 attorneys, and some of the positions that are open are more experienced attorneys that take time
I
to fill.
understand, but you're being paid for them right now. What I'm saying, I'm looking at numbers. I'm not looking at experience.
I guess I'm confused as to what you're saying, Alderman.
Oh, what I'm saying is you're fully funded. So if those attorneys showed up today, you were able to hire them tomorrow, it's in your budget that you would have the funding for those, right?
No, for attorney 2 positions, right now, we are only allocated 3.5, whereas historically we were allocated 5.5. So if we had 5 people show up for attorney 2 positions, we are not allocated for 5.5. We are allocated only for 3.5.
Okay, but on the more experienced, you're allocated for your full complement of attorneys is 52, is it?
53.
53. And in your budget, if you were to find the 53 to completely fill those positions, it's in your budget, the money's in your budget, you could pay them, right? You couldn't say, gee, we just don't have enough money to fully fund them. So that's in your budget right now. So even though they're not there, the money for them is there. And that money can be moved around somewhat to do something differently until we're working. I mean, just so you understand everything, this budget is so tight, next year could be worse. And not trying to be mean spirited in the budget. Like I said, we'll discuss some of the other stuff in public safety, but in the budget, we're still fighting to get simple things like streets repaired, ward capital. It's very small stuff. Every department has been cut. And every employee has received the standard 1.5% raise, and in your budget, it's increased. But the funding for the employees that you don't have is still in your budget. And you could choose to be light one attorney if necessary. Because how long have you been since you've been fully staffed with the money that
This office has never been fully staffed, even when I took the office.
Okay,
This
so
office has never been fully staffed.
So there should be plenty of funds available in places and positions that are not filled. I mean, that's what we do.
And Alderman, I agree with you. I understand that we're in a crisis with the city of St. Louis. I understand that we have to make tough decisions. But what I'm asking you are for essential things. These are not additional things that if we could not work within our budget, we would not try to work within our budget. We truly have to continue to public safety is the number one issue in the city of St. Louis. And while we look to cut, we understand that we're going to have cuts, but we're only asking for essential things, and we're not asking. We know that you got to make tough decisions, and I appreciate you saying that. And I assure you, we're going to make do with what we have, but also we do need a car. We do need to upgrade our infrastructure for computers, because one of the things with COVID-19, we're going to have to conduct a lot of these procedures remotely. And if we do not have the bandwidth or the capability to have all this overload the system and crash the system at one time, when we have an old infrastructure in our building, that's going to be a problem. So these are things that we have to, in this COVID-19 crisis, ask for. This is not asking for additional. This is really asking for the things that we need to make sure we continue to run the city effectively and efficiently for public safety of all. And this is what we're asking. And we understand you got tough decisions.
So
And Madam Secretary Attorney, if I may.
Yes, you may.
And Alderman Vaccaro, and I believe Alderwoman Davis will answer your question. If you look at the budget documents, I'm not sure which page you have. It's labeled in your booklet, but if you go to the Secretary Attorney Budget 1010, and if you go to Personnel Services, so for fiscal year 21,
right.
So for fiscal year 21, if you look under workers' comp insurance or long-term disability, for example, so for workers' comp, we requested $87,612. We were provided $48,762. For long-term disability, we requested $8,787. We were provided $5,462. Now, 1010 is the fund that majority of our employees sit on. And so that's the reason I say it was underfunded. But if you scroll on down and go to the actual Prop P, you will see that fund is and again, I'm not sure what page it's on of your booklet, but for Prop P, you'll see for workers' comp, we asked for $12,151, but we were provided $21,014. For long-term disability, we asked for $1,173. We were given $2,353. So what it reads is that it was underfunded for the basic account, which normally is used for our employees, to be taken from Prop P to supplement. And so that was what we were referring to, Alderwoman Boyd.
Okay.
Or Davis, my apologies.
So, but it's funded in a roundabout way. Just to give you an example, and then I'm going to move on but I'll ask one. I want to give you one example and then one last question. For example, the firefighters are using 10-year-old equipment for breathing apparatuses when they go into fires, which seems to me to be pretty important stuff. Yet it's not in the budget. And the fire chief explained yesterday that this is important, and they would like us to try to find the money to see if we can get the breathing apparatuses. So the simple question is, it seems to me like a car either way, I don't know. Maybe the city could find something and not charge your department. The bandwidth, so what is your additional request? And how much more will it cost you to upgrade your computer system and bandwidth? And can you get by the same questions we asked the fire department yesterday, who's desperately needs communication devices to keep up with their firemen? The chief said, well, we can get by another year understanding the budget. So I guess the question is, what do you need for the bandwidth and the computers? And can you get by another year, till next year? Because this COVID thing is eventually going to go away. I would hope this isn't a lifelong thing. Can you work within the budget that you have this year? Or is there something that's completely, absolutely essential, even on the computer, that, gee, we just can't even get by without doing this? I think that's the simple question. The other stuff where they took the money from Prop P to fill workers' comp, it's been really creative. They cut our ward capital out. So they said that street lights, sidewalks, trees, dumpsters, they're all cut out of the budget, which I feel are very essential things. So given the fact that our budget has been completely devastated and will be worse next year, I don't know if you can hear me or not, Kim. I know you're pointing. The question is, can you get by with the budget that you have this year, or is anything just absolutely essential, whether it's the computer upgrade, and how much would that cost? I'm not even sure we could put it together, but this I think these are the questions that we're really trying to ask. Where you know, all the budgets are jacked up. So that's the question. I think Kim is somehow can't. She's either muted or something.
I believe they're discussing an answer.
Oh, okay. Well, you're still muted, Kim. I can't hear you. Can we make sure to unmute the sacred attorney?
So I'm just gonna tell you, this is, I'm on my phone with the video because I
know, I get, this has been crazy.
And I can't, and I couldn't, and I'm not trying to not show my face, but my web capabilities in the office are weak, so it won't show the video. That's why, you know, I can't get another year without this capabilities, because we're gonna have to conduct serious trials virtually. We're gonna have to conduct hearings virtually. And the stronger our capabilities, because all of us are going to be using this in the courthouse at one time, we don't want it to crash into.
So what do you estimate the cost for that? That seems like the only thing.
220. The total cost will probably be 220,000, and that's to strengthen the internet capabilities and to lay the infrastructure.
Now that seems important, and we could try to work within that. The car, to me, I'll be honest with you, just doesn't seem like it's just do or die with the car. I have no problem trying to figure out, you know, keeping in mind, we have to take this from somebody else's budget, whether we take it from the sheriff's department, the fire department, grass cutting. The budget's set. The alderman can't add to a budget without subtracting from somewhere else. So we have to take a hard look, and we have to do this by tomorrow afternoon, because that's when we're doing our cuts and putbacks.
Okay.
What if it's truly an emergency? We might be able to take $220,000 out of the emergency reserves, as long as it's truly an emergency, and it sounds like it. So I would say that I have no problem with that, and I'll move on. But that, to me, seems to be the only real essential thing that we might be able to work within.
All right, thank you, Alderman Carl.
Come on.
All right, we will move on to get my list out here. I'm getting too old. Alderwoman Howard.
So, Ms. Garner, originally you proposed 250,000 for the credit for the computer. Now it's down to 230,000. Is that correct?
Oh, no, he was saying how to right now what we needed right now to get this started. Total, it'll be about 250,000. But I was listening to what the alderman said about the needs and how we have to make tough decisions. So at least if I can get $220,000, I think I'm able to do it within that amount. But that's not all I need. But I'm asking for at least 220,000 if I can't get the $250,000 that I requested.
So I guess I have to ask, which department should we cut this from?
I can't answer that. That's your job. And I
guess that, it's hard for us to decide who's less worthy. And the other thing is I go through your budget, the budget isn't cut that much from last year, but you have a number of positions. I would say probably you said about 20 positions unfilled, as I see here on paper. And that's not just attorneys, but you're down 2. And I just have to ask, you in your opening statement said you weren't taking many cases to court. So it would seem to me it would be less labor intensive.
No, I never said I'm not taking
cutting 2
cases
attorneys.
to court. Excuse me, Alderman. I never said I'm not taking cases to court. I said most of our adjudications are not with the trial. It's from pleas. So we do go to court all the time. we try more cases and as well as conduct more have higher caseload than any other jurisdiction in the state of Missouri. So we're the
Okay,
hardest.
then maybe I misunderstood. I'm sorry. Okay, so you want us to come up with $600,000 additionally for your budget. Okay, we'll sharpen our pencils and see what we can do. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have a few questions. So I know just since I've been on Ways and Means and when you've come before us, there has always seemed to be an issue with like computer software or technology and that type of thing. And I get it that, you know, a lot of stuff was antiquated and the infrastructure wasn't in place to for you to run as efficient as you could, but you all have done a good job at it. So I guess I'm concerned because these problems haven't gone away. And like for years, you said you all were working with Windows something. It was something so old, it literally blew me away. So have you all looked at any other grants or any other initiatives to try to fill this gap in regards to the technology improvements that you need for your office?
Well, one of the things we've done is we won an Amazon Idea Challenge. So we are working with Amazon to help look at how they can help us strengthen our infrastructure through a grant in terms of this app. And we're going to continue to use that as some of the supplement. But as you heard, we have these old courthouse buildings that were not built for the new technology. So when we're talking about this infrastructure, everybody's like, well, why she keeps coming back? Well, we're talking about centuries old, where we had to first lay the capability. Now we gotta lay the infrastructure because we got some of the capability. Now we have to lay the pipeline going in and out of the courthouses, and that takes drilling, that takes time. And so these are things that we have to do because we have to come into the 21st century, and we've never been there. And this is what, and now with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's forcing us to do things that we've never done. You know, courts before never had the capability of working remotely. Now we have that capability, and we have to do that because it's really a do or die type of situation for public safety of the community, public safety and rights of the defendant and everyone inside that courtroom. And unlike a defense attorney, the prosecutor's office, we are concerned, we have to protect everyone inside that courtroom and the public. And when you talk about this pandemic of the COVID-19 virus that we have an intersection of all the health disparities that we're talking about with the increasing numbers of COVID-19 concentrated in St. Louis City and St. Louis County out of the whole state of Missouri. We have to do this infrastructure because it's a public health crisis. So that's why we continue to push that, but we kind of laid the foundation for it. And now we're here that we have to do it. So unfortunately it happened at a time where we're all experiencing budget cuts, but we have to do that because it's about safety.
Right, and I understand that. I mean, I live very close to City Hall, and we have antiquated fiber and stuff, and that's a big problem, you know, even just with internet usage. But it was a situation where we had to tap into Fiber at Soldiers Memorial, and I know that as they are doing upgrades throughout the entire downtown, it seems like there should be a middle ground to where we could probably get some type of help to make sure that our systems are coming up to speed.
Well,
and
actually,
so,
Alderman, just to tell you that, actually what we've been doing also, when you talk about working together, we work with the police department because as they're expanding their infrastructure, they're leaving us behind because we are two different entities. So what we try to do is work together with Captain Hayden, who's been really instrumental in helping us come up with solutions of how we can slowly integrate and upgrade with them. But we also have to have some of the costs. So it's a shared cost. So none of this is just, you know, right. This is for us because we don't own the building. The city owns the building, the courts control the building, and the courts sometimes don't want to do this type of upgrades because they know how much it costs. But in the end, it's going to benefit all of us. And that's for us to be efficient because, you know, public safety and the police department, one of the biggest challenges with them is to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus in their ranks. Because if you hear like New York, a lot of times because they're coming in and out of the building, when we make a lot of things remote, that prevents them from infecting people in our office, affecting the community, as well as taking that back to their families. And so they've been instrumental and also wanted to help share some of the costs, but it's little things because we have to keep the system separate because of security concerns. And that's why we have to do a lot of the work, because security concerns and CJ's recommendations, we can't commingle a lot of these infrastructures because of we have to all keep a level of security level for our individual offices to comply with Regis. And that's a big part of why we have to do this, the bulk of this work ourselves.
Okay, and thank you for definitely going deep into that. And so I know some time ago we had spoke about some improvements that you made in your office in regards to data tracking. I know in the past you said that things were like so antiquated. I mean, you had like boxes and boxes of stuff. And so you had moved some of those items toward a digital system or whatever. Can you talk about how you have compiled that data and how you've been able to use it within your office to track things and to dispel some of the misinformation that's been out regarding your office?
Well, thank you, Alderman. That's a good question. One of the things that we faced was an antiquated system. We were 6 versions behind. So we upgraded to the most recent version, and we continue to keep on track. Why that's important, because the Circuit Attorney's Office was the first, before me, was the first prosecutor's office in the country to have a case management system that they can track data. So we, wanted to keep that system in place, as well as we were the leaders for other prosecutors' offices to understand who they charge, what they charge, and what they're doing inside our office. But we took it a step further, because we're not just the beginning stage of case management systems to all the prosecutors around the country. We also said, because we are the busiest office, we want to see how we're doing. We created a data analyst office inside the Circuit Attorney's Office. You may say, wow, that's important. One, we want to make sure what is going into the system, our case management system, is accurate, as well as so we can see what we need to do better. We can make changes to what we need to work on. But at the same time, we need to make sure we track when we have these statistics now that are put out there of, for example, we heard someone say that I have a 28% conviction rate, which is simply not true. We have over a 96 felony conviction rate, which has been tracked, and it had been actual tested by police data as well as court data. And so one of the things that when we talk about data is the prosecutor's office are the only ones that know the true data, because we are the ones that deal with all the cases in the way. The courts have certain types of data that they send up to OSCA, which is a different kind of data, which tracks in a different way. But we have data analysts that can show our data, what we do, what we bring in, what we charge, and our dispositions. And that's what we have. So we have a 96% felony conviction rate. That's just felonies. Now, when I talk about, and Alderman Hodder was saying, well, we're not taking everything into court. Well, 96% of those cases are pleas. So when we're talking about conviction rates, we're looking at less than 4% of our total work. So most of our cases are handled not by trial, but by a disposition. That's why when you hear me talk about alternatives and diversions and different programs, that's because that is the bulk of our work. That's 97% of our work. And that's every prosecutor office around this country. This is not just St. Louis City office. Most offices only have trials 3%. We actually have a little bit under 4% of our caseload is trials. And when we look at our data, we're going to trial on more violent cases and more serious cases, as well as more complex cases. So we are, doing the hard work. And so when you talk about a conviction rate, when you talk about statistical sound measures, measuring less than 4% of the total work is not accurate or sound. And no one measures statistics like that. So when you have these people spout out statistics that are backed by nothing other than just fear and to just degrade the hard work of the office, we have people in this office who are doing the job and doing it right.
Okay, thank you for explaining that, because I know that that's something that has been very important to my constituents, because people hear so much in the media. And so I hope that before our time is up, we can definitely get those hard documents. I think we all know that you said it's around 575,000 or whatever, but I mean, we can all be open and honest about it. Money is tight, especially right now, but it's my hope that you can get some type of assistance. I don't know where we would take it from, but it's my hope that we can help out some. So I just, as being over your office, I know there's always different pots of money out there, and there's all kind of pilot programs. And I mean, we have the crime to support any kind of grant. So I would just encourage maybe you or some of your staff to constantly keep looking for pots of money, because we're not really talking about a whole lot of money. So I would just, in light of, just waiting to come before us every year and with everything that's going on, I would, that would probably be one person's job, just to hunt for money, for my department to make it better. So
Alderman, can I just say that? And just
go
to
ahead.
say that, that's a good question. A lot of times when we have to look for money, they ask for city matches in some of these areas for grants. And a lot of times that's why when we're asking, it's not just that's the total. We're trying to get a innovation grant, which we can, but they want to see how the city has dedicated certain funds to us to participate in this.
Well, if it's presented, I'm sure we would probably support something like that if it's presented, and then that will keep us from being in this spot every year around this time when everybody is grabbing that money, So I think that that's something you definitely should look into. But like I said, we are definitely in support of the upgrades. We just need to find the money. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Gardner.
Thank you.
All right.
And Madam Secretary Attorney, if I may.
Yes, you can.
I wanted to note that we do in fact consistently seek out grant opportunities. While we don't have a dedicated full-time grant writer, we do have employees as part of the teamwork in our office that are willing and more than happy to lend their skill set to help write for grants. And so we have successfully obtained different grants and absolutely are open to exploring whatever options are available with respect to getting the projects that we need funded. So I did want to stress that it's not a situation as if we wait to appear before Ways and Means every year, because we also understand, like everyone else, this has been an unprecedented year. And so we absolutely on a consistent basis take steps to go out and actively seek out grants. Everyone's competing for grants, and sometimes we've had success and sometimes we've not, but we have actually received grant funding in some instances. It's just not for the computer upgrades that we need.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard. We'll move on to Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Murphy.
Hello, yes, most of my concerns were already asked. I need to go over this a little bit more carefully too about the supplemental funds that Alderman Davis was talking about. I think the car probably shouldn't be a problem. We don't charge each other for automobiles, I don't think, from one system to the next. And though I know that's a small number. And then same way with the PPE, all that will be reimbursed, I'm sure. We're getting thousands of dollars for all of that. Maybe something else can be put into the to that. If something is a necessity because of the virus, perhaps that could be requested, some of the money through that. I don't know, that's just a question. And then I want to make sure that we get the proper statistics about, what's going on in the office and all that. So, because we do get calls about that. Don't know about Cure Violence can come. I know that's generally Cure Violence money. Since you are doing so many things, to not, to put people in, to get them in the right spot beforehand, maybe some money is available through that. I don't know, again, just asking. And then I guess my thing would be, since this is such a big ask, 585,000, what would you say, I know this is very hard, what would you say is your biggest need? Your greatest concern?
I think the computer infrastructure is the greatest concern.
Infrastructure, you think
I think that's the greatest concern. So,
okay,
that's the biggest concern.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you very much. Ms.
Thank
Carter.
you.
No more
All right,
questions.
Alderwoman. Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Circuit Attorney Gardner, for being here today. I know you have a tough job with the crime rate that we have here in the city of St. Louis. Along with my colleague who just Alderwoman Murphy's questions, the PPE that you're paying for out of your own budget, was a request made to the city of St. Louis to fill your needs of PPE? I know that it has been described to us, that any department who needs it will get it. I'm curious if that request has been made from your office.
Well, earlier before when I convened the stakeholders, that was the number one ask for the director of the health department, Dr. Eccles, is, we need PPE. And I was told that when the city gets that, they will make those available. So I will continue to follow up. But as you know, that that infrastructure has been limited and slowly trickling in to the everyday individuals in the state of Missouri. I mean, we have nurses that don't have appropriate PPE in the state of Missouri. So one of the things I think that people have forgot about is because and we're asking for additional funds, through grants, because I know there's grants out there that we're trying to request and other prosecutors' offices are requesting those funds. But I think that people, when they talk about essential workers, they forgot about law enforcement, and we're a part of law enforcement. And so from the get-go, we were not given that opportunity. And I've talked to many different people through the state of Missouri. I'm working with Dr. Fred Rodnick of St. Louis University Medical School to do an assessment of our office, as well as work with the working group in the courts, how we can safely make everyone safe. I know the courts have some PPE for the jurors and individuals in their respective places, but one of the things that has been lacking is the individual offices that like mine. And that was some of the concern, because it's not just me. We also have the grand jurors. We also have witnesses and victims. And so it's not just, the number of people in my office, is people who come inside my office. And I want to make sure we have appropriate PPE. And so I'm going to continue to ask, but I'm just telling you, those are some of the things that we're seeing when we're doing that ask. Everyone says, okay, we'll get to you, but I haven't had a firm answer of how to get that. So I'm going to continue to work to get that. But I'm just saying, if I have to pay for it out of my budget, I would ask that it was some resources to restore those funds, because that's taken away from other things that we can support. So
before we look to filling that need out of our budget, I think that the formal request that'll be made, we've been assured that every department within the city of St. Louis who needs PPE can have access to it. If your office is any different, we need to know straight on the front end. But I think to make sure that formal request is put in is very important before we start looking at budgetary issues. With regards to your staffing, it looks like, so the 5.5 attorney level 2s that you've kind of pointed out as being a high level of need. If I'm reading this budget correctly, how many of those staffing positions were filled last year?
I don't have that in front of me. Ms. Serena Wilson, can you speak to that?
I guess what I'm looking for is how many of that level of attorney did you have on staff last year?
Well, I mean, I can get you that number, but the problem is, see, when you're looking at a level 1, 2, a lot of times people move in and out of different levels because they get promoted. Exactly. So a lot of times I can't say, well, how many, but they were promoted up. We have a lot of inner promotions those are why those positions were not filled, because we moved them to higher levels. That's the reason. So it's not like, okay, we had 5 positions and we didn't fill 3. So I think that's some of the confusion with our budget, that you're thinking we're not trying to answer the question, but people go in and out different levels. And that's how it's been done historically in this office.
Okay, so I know when we were here in Ways and Means with your office last year, there was, I think, around 20 open positions at that time. It sounds like we have 20 professional positions open at this time, which represents about 30% of your overall professional staff. So looking at your overall budget of about $5 million, if we consider that, maybe 30% of those positions are open at any time, where is that funding? If you have those open positions, is that you're not paying it out in salary? Does it sit in an account that we can have access to for some of these unmet needs during this time?
I mean, we can try to use some of those unmet needs, but we're going to fill those positions because the positions in our office, specifically attorneys, are going to be filled. And like I said, we have people waiting to fill those positions because we extended offers. So those are positions that are technically look open on paper, but are currently filled. So I think that is some of the issues with that. So we can't say, yeah, that money is available for other things, other needs. But
what I'm looking at not is moving forward, but last year's budget. So since we allocated $4.9 million for staffing, and it sounds like for that year, fiscal year 2020, those positions were open during fiscal year 2020. So what I'm looking at is, a 30% vacancy rate within that professional staffing during last year's budget, for which your office received $4.9 million for staffing. So what I'm guessing is that there's about $1.5 million that was not paid out in payroll that should be sitting somewhere, since it wasn't paid out last year. Perhaps we can have access to it to fill that $500,000 need that you've outlined with some of those other budget holes.
Madam Secretary Attorney, if I may.
Okay.
Alderwoman, the information or the statistics that you've provided, we don't have access to what it is you're looking at, so I don't know that to be true. As you stated, as the Circuit Attorney has noted, what looks on paper is not necessarily how it actually is in actual practice. As the Circuit Attorney has expressed, we have openings because we do in fact have attorneys that move up to positions, because that is the way in which our office works. But also too, we have what appears to be openings because we have individuals that have received offers, accepted offers, and are merely waiting to pass the bar before they can start as an ACA in our office. And so what looks on paper may not necessarily be the actual reality. And I wanted to clarify that again.
I think there's some confusion here. It sounds, Circuit Attorney Gardner indicated earlier that the staffing has never been at capacity. So we've never fully staffed what we've allocated funding for. So last year—
No, let me clarify that, Alderman, just to make sure. I was telling you, when I took office, this office has never been staffed fully that with the positions allocated, because people move in and out of those positions, as well as their grant positions that are still on the budget. That looks like they're positions that are open that are not filled because the grant went away. So we have a lot of positions that look open, but because they were grant positions and those grants are no longer in existence, that they still are there, and they look like that's attorney's position that could have been filled that we didn't fulfill or is zeroed out. So those are a lot of how our budget looks. And so our budget was never, when I inherited the office, our budget was never at total capacity. And even when I was an assistant circuit attorney working as a line attorney under Jennifer Joyce, we never had the office filled to full capacity. So I think that that's where our budget is different, because people move in and out of those levels. And it may look like an opening, but it's not. And most of the attorneys coming in are attorney ones that are beginning level attorneys. And so then when you have attorney twos, those are higher level attorneys that deal with higher level cases. And then we have people who've moved up from those attorney twos to deal with homicides and different violent crimes. So they move up to a higher range. So I think that's where some of that confusion is. And like I said, we'll do whatever we can to try to work within our budget like we have. But these are some issues that we need to make sure, because in the end of the day, the city has how many open positions? We don't say, well, since the city can't fill them, we don't need those positions. So why is the same thing in terms of my office, who is charged with public safety? We have 1,295 police officers. They say they have 133 open positions. No one says let's cut 133 positions because they can't fill them. And this is not, and like I said before, this is not making widgets. This is actual attorneys with skills that want to come into this office, that have to have unique experience that we need to recruit from. And in light of when you work here, 1 year is like 10 years anywhere else. And so our attorneys are recruited to make six figures versus $50,000 salary with six-figure debt. So when we talk about filling positions, you can't just say 30%. It was always people coming in and out or moving up. And that is constantly going to be the problem of every office around the state of Missouri, as well as before I took this office. So I understand what you're saying, but we do try to work within the budget. We try to fill those needs as necessary, but we also want to make sure we fill those positions. And that's why that's important to ask for that additional at least $220,000 to $250,000 for computer upgrades. And we're asking for that.
Bring up an excellent plan. So I guess what Mike, with the circuit attorney's budget, it's my understanding that the circuit attorney's office, considering it's outside, it functions outside of the general fund. Is the circuit attorney's office receiving those funds, or when you don't have an employee serving, does that money then just stay in the general fund? Are we paying your employees out of a circuit attorney's fund, or when you have an open position that isn't filled, does that money reside in the circuit attorney's office, or does it go back to the general fund?
It goes back to the general fund.
It remains in the general fund. So the
unused portion goes back to the general fund.
So
Is that right,
last
Miss?
year, what
is
is the unused portion? What did the unused portion revert back to the general fund? What was that total amount that was allocated to the circuit attorney's office for salaries that wasn't utilized, that was reverted back to the general fund?
I have to get that number. I don't have that in front of me.
I think that number would be really critical to be looking at when we're determining the budget, so that we can understand what your unused portion, especially if it reverted back to the general fund, or if it resides in the circuit attorney's budget in some way, so that we can try to find you this $500,000 that you need. We agree that you need to have technology to be able to conduct your business remotely. You have to have video. It was alarming to all of us when you logged on and we couldn't see you. I think this was the, one of the first times that we had that situation, with the department head coming before the Ways and Means Committee without that technology in place. And it is critical to have those conversations with technology in place. So we want to make sure you have the tools you need, but we have to be able to understand where the budget numbers are to be able to find you the money that you need to be able to get there. So if we could get that unused, the portion that was unused from last year's budget,
Okay.
And whether it went back to the general fund or if it resides in your office, I think it'd be very helpful.
Okay.
And then as well with that PPE request, the conviction rate, I know we're not here to talk about that, but since it was brought up, it would be very helpful, since sounds like you have some good software that's keeping track of those things. If you could provide us with a report that describes that. I'm just very curious about that. There's so many numbers that float around in the general public about it, and it would be certainly helpful to have that.
Well, can I just talk about that? I mean, I look forward to having the ability to share the data, but when you say float around, I mean, that's misinformation. I just want to clarify that, because if you ask the person who put out those statistics, it's never fact checked. And we fact check with actual court data as well as police data. And we have all those things. And so when you talk about statistics, and I know I was told earlier, this is a Ways and Means actual committee, and this is not public safety. I look forward to sharing those with everyone, and as well as the public safety committee, to make sure that we can get that information. Hello? I'm sorry, my computer, you see the computer, I'm on my phone and on the computer, so it looks crazy, so sorry. No, I look forward, but I know that it's about public safety, and the misinformation that goes around is very sad, because it's truly misinformation, and it's put out for fear for what we're doing. I mean, it's sad.
And official reporting would be helpful, I think, and maybe just clarifying some of that. But back to the budget stuff. I know as well, just real quickly, I want to point out the Prop P funding. It looks like we do have $85,000 appropriated for technology for your office. Is that $250,000 that you're requesting on top of this $85,000?
Yes, because that's the infrastructure that we have to have. Plus, we still have another project of switches that are additional project that we need to also do, which is going to cost about $40,000 to $50,000, or that's an average. But then there's the installation costs that we have, so that's for installation and other things associated with this infrastructure.
Sounds like the numbers have kind of been floating around here today. It might be helpful if there was a proposal or just to kind of enumerate what that's for, just as we fishing around for exact numbers for you. We're going to get down to pennies here, and this budget is going to be very, very ugly. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman. We'll move on to Alderman Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Madam Circuit Attorney, for coming before this committee. Every year we continue to throw money at every public safety faction of the city, whether it's the police department, whether it's the corrections division, whether it's the fire department, but we are always so skeptical on giving money to the circuit attorney, who is the chief law enforcement officer of this city. And we know that throwing money at something is not going to fix the problem, or is not going to improve the problem. But if we do not adequately fund our circuit attorney's office, then we will continue to see a revolving cycle of crime in this crime continuum, right? And if we don't deal with public safety as a crime continuum or treat it as it is, then we are doing a grave disservice to our constituents here in the city of St. Louis. So just listening to everyone, I think we're just getting way off topic. We want to talk about crime convictions. We want to talk about what money was not spent on, or we want to talk about money that was given to her and then taken back. I want to know exactly, Circuit Attorney, how much money do you need exactly, like the real number?
The real number for the needs, we need about, I don't want to get the number wrong, Miss Serena Wilson Griffin. She has the exact number.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The number that was given, added all things considered, was 585, Alderman. Okay. But again, the Circuit Attorney, based on comments from Alderman Vaccaro and a few others, reduced that number down as low as she possibly could. But the ask was 585, Alderman.
And so if we're just looking at the computer upgrades, we're asked between 220,000 to 250,000, but 220,000, I think that's the bare minimum we can get to upgrade our infrastructure. If the Ways and Means Committee would allow to find, but additional $220,000 from somewhere.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Circuit Attorney, and thank you for all that you do for the city. And it should be this committee's responsibility to find that money. Again, we want to go back and forth talking about what was spent and what was not spent. And as you said, we want to use your conviction rating to say why you don't deserve this money or to justify why we don't adequately fund you. And it's just like you said, we don't have the real numbers because we don't work in your office. All we see is what the media gives us. So thank you for all that you do. I support you, and I hope this committee supports you. And I will be working with the budget director to find you the money that you need to run your office appropriately, like we expect you to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Oldenburg, any questions, Circuit Attorney?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Circuit Attorney, thanks a lot for being here. I know you have a hard stop. Is that correct? You have another appointment, so I will try to be brief. And I know there are other members of the committee. So just quickly on the computer issue, and I don't want to belabor this point, but you're representing today that the request is between 220 and 250,000 for that. And that's the second phase of this upgrade, correct? Because I think in the last budget, yeah. Okay, so that really will complete the infrastructure upgrade and the computer upgrades that you need, correct?
No, this will not. This will be the second phase of upgrading the infrastructure that we need to make sure we can have access, the ability to access Wi-Fi appropriately inside the courthouses. But we still, because we're dealing with the old infrastructure, we had to lay the initial foundation to even be able to do this. So we're phase 2, but that's not the complete phase. We're doing it in phases because we know we can't possibly do all this in one big phase. And so that's why it may look like we're piecemealing, but that's what we have to do to, one, consider the challenges of a budget that's very limited, as well as make sure we appropriately have everyone in the city of St. Louis funded appropriately. So we're trying to do our due diligence to do this in phases. So the next phase, based on the COVID-19 crisis, one of the things you see right now, I'm on my computer in my office. The Wi-Fi capability is just not up to par to do video and to do different things. And when we have to do depositions and different hearings, that's going to be a challenge for all of us. And we want to make sure that we can do the work appropriately, effectively for the people of the city of St. Louis. So that's why this new capability is imperative, because we're trying to do it in different phases over a long period of time, but COVID-19 has made it impossible for us to wait anymore. So it's going to be about 3 to 4 phases, depending on how the budget looks each year. And so that's why we need this 220,000. That's the lowest. That's the person gave me a range, and we're going to ask for the lowest range. So I put the 220,000, but it's between 220 to 250,000 to do this upgrade.
But it looks like and I'm on 121 of the budget book, and I don't know what supplement schedules you have in front of you, Madam Circuit Attorney, but it looked like you requested 130,000 for computer and technology services, at least out of Fund 1010, the general revenue. So above and beyond that request, and it looks like 100 was what the budget director's office put forth. So it's higher than the 130 that you're requesting there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Got it. I see. And then quickly, you were talking a little bit about, which I enjoyed the conversation with Alderwoman Hubbard and the dialogue around the data, and the Alderwoman from the 20th Ward hit on this as well. Because I don't think there's anything more important than the integrity of data. And you mentioned that you do have a data analyst kind of housed within the Circuit Attorney's office. And they're tracking sort of the case statistics. Is that accurate?
Well, they're tracking many different statistics. They track what comes to our office, what we charge, who we charge, and disposition. So they track many things, but I look forward to sharing that with the Public Safety Committee to go in detail for the data if they ask me, and to share it with everybody.
Is there a policy or policy statements or a manual of procedures that outline the use of that data, how that data is managed?
Well, we're still building that out, and so right now this is what to let you know. One of the problems we had, because we were 6 versions behind, we had to make sure we build the infrastructure like we're doing to make sure we can get to this point. And so when you're looking at how we build out this data to be appropriate, it took time, because we had to actually look at paper files and do the things that we had to do to make sure it was appropriately documented. And so we took the time to do that. And it's still at the pilot stage, but now it's to the point where I believe that the community wants to see some of the work that we've been doing, and to really acknowledge the hardworking men and women in my office to do the job every day. So we're at the pilot stage, but we're ready to release the data that we have.
Okay, so there is a written policy or a set of procedures that dictates how that data is managed. Is that right? Did I hear that?
No, this is a pilot. Okay. So it's not completed, and right now we're going to start to release some of that. It's still being built out, and we're still working out some of the kinks. So no. Okay. Thanks. And then I'm not going to belabor this point, but it just looked like in my high level view of particularly some on the general fund side, but some on the Prop P side of funds, and the Alderman from the 20th touched on this. There does appear to be a significant amount of underspending year to year with those proceeds. So, and I'm just on page 134 of the budget book, which is the Prop P fund, and the Alderwoman, again, touched that there's about $1.5 million, I think, in this budget from underspending of Prop P dollars. In fiscal year 19, about half of the 1.5 or 1.6 million of sales and use tax was spent. And year over year, then there continues to be, at least from fiscal year 19, an underspending in that account. And I think that's just where to underscore there's an ability to utilize those funds for where you're holding your highest priorities. So, and I think it was at this last year's budget hearing that we discussed in 2017, there was, there was a $390,000 supplemental appropriation that 70% of those funds were returned because I think, and I have an email here from Mr. Warwick, the community engagement specialist was hired at $80,000 a year for these funds, as well as we wanted to launch the witness protection program, jail diversion program, but we were unable to fully implement those programs, and approximately $270,000 was returned. So $270,000 came back in
FY 17, 18, and now from 18, 19, there's another 800,000 that is being unspent. So I'm concerned, are there enough uses in your office? Because the Prop P dollars, as it was put to the public, were for those more proactive and preventative uses of violence reduction and crime reduction around jail diversion, around community engagement. And based on the underspending, I'm concerned if resources aren't being put to those use.
Well, I'm going to push back on your characterization of underspending because that's not simply true. And when you talk about that money in FY 2017, that was, by the time it was given to our office, we had to allocate those resources. It went back to the general revenue. So, I can't speak on specifics to that, but that's what happened with that. So when you're talking about the Prop P money, we gave across the board raises to our employees. And as you hear Ms. Serena Wilson Griffin, that money is going to supplement the benefits for our employees. So I think that characterization of underspending is not appropriate. And as we know that some of the problems we've had is being the ability to transfer our resources, because that's a big issue that you know about in terms of, which I'm not going to get into, of how we transfer things to cover certain spending in our office that we need. So, those are some of the challenges we have and we've continued to have, but we look forward to you guys supporting what we need. And that's the computer upgrade, because as you know, public safety and the COVID-19 crisis, that's put us in a situation where we're asking for the $220,000 to $250,000 for the computer upgrades. As you see, I'm not able to have a video conversation on my computer, my laptop. So that's serious. So when you have a victim or you have a police officer who wants to review a charge for a serious case, do we say, oh, because of the technology, we can't provide? So I understand what you're saying, but there's many different challenges that we face, and we continue to work with you guys and the board to find that money. And we do use our existing resources, but at the same time, there's been some challenges and,
Sure. So, all right. And then, the other thing I want to bring up, because I think you brought it up additionally too, as another request, was $100,000 in the legal fund or for legal services, it looks like. Yeah.
That's not important either, right? Our office doesn't get sued.
I'm sorry?
I said, is that not important? That's frivolous spending, legal representation for our office?
I'm asking the question that's for you to hire outside law firms in defense of the office, correct?
That's hiring anyone in any complex situation in defense of not only just my office, but the people inside the office. We have suits all the time. And at this time, we can no longer use the city councilor's office ever. And we will not use the city councilors to have our representation because there is direct conflict of interest that he created, that now we need to fund the legal services portion of our billing, more than $25,000. I think you guys put in there. We have to have $100,000 because we cannot use the city councilor's office. There's a direct conflict.
Right. No, I understand that. I'm also concerned about if the use of executing those contracts and paying those contracts with city proceeds is unlawful in light of the recent revelation that was made in the court case of Charles Lane versus Kim Gardner and the Circuit Attorney's Office, that the use of taxpayers' funds for those legal contracts is illegal and unlawful.
That's not what they said. What the court said, it was a temporary restraining order at this time, which we're still fighting in court. So this is not a completed case. And so that's what the judge ruled, a temporary restraining order. So whether those contracts, that is not saying those contracts are illegal or we did anything improper to utilize funds in any way to pay legal representation. So we're still fighting that, and that's not true. And I can't go into detail because it's an open pending litigation, but that is not a right characterization that somehow paying legal services for our office is illegal. That's been done before me, and that's been done from every circuit attorney who's ever had this office. But now when you have Kim Gardner, somehow there's a problem, and there's no problem with paying our contracts.
And this is
Madam Secretary, if I may.
I'm simply concerned about if we're appropriating dollars that would be potentially illegally spent. on a
That's for
year.
the court to decide,
Madam-
and there hasn't been a decision made.
Okay. Okay.
Madam, exactly. That's for the court to decide. It's an open litigation matter, and Alden, your characterization of the matter is not correct, as the circuit attorney has stated.
The upshot of that ruling is not that contracts and use of city taxpayer dollars, there's not an obligation for the city to pay. That's the upshot. Or
Is there a question, Alderman?
yeah. My question was, I thought the upshot of the ruling in that case was that the city has no obligation to pay for the engagement of those contracts to be used for legal services that were not appropriately followed through the city's process.
And again, as the circuit attorney noted, this is active litigation. The order of the court is a public record. I would encourage anyone that's interested in it to read it. And if there is some ambiguity, I believe the alderman has counsel that can assist him in interpreting the order. But that is not for the circuit attorney's office to do.
Okay.
As it was noted earlier, this is Ways and Means, and so we are here to discuss the budget, not current litigation.
I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Asking a question about dollars that were asked for that would be spent on things that potentially could be illegal, but we will move on. I actually have no further questions or comments. Thanks again for your time, Madam Circuit Attorney.
All right, thank you, Alderman. We'll move on to Alderwoman Boyd. Are you still with us? Alderwoman Boyd? Do anybody see her? I see her. Will you unmute yourself, Pam? Are you having problems like yesterday?
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you are. We can hear you now, dear. Thank you very much.
Everybody
Your
has
turn.
asked the questions. I have no questions.
All right, thank you very much. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. In interest of time, a lot of my questions were asked and answered. Just thank you, Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner, for your leadership, and Ms. Serena for your continued service in our city in response to COVID and keeping the office running. And I will definitely be working with the committee to try to get the funds you need to make those upgrades. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you, Alderwoman. Does anyone have any further comments that we've gone through before I?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll
Yes,
take
Madam
10
Vice,
seconds.
please continue.
What I wanted to say is I thank all of you all. You've cleared me up on a number of things, and I also have more concern about two things. What I'd like to do is to make sure that today there is contact with the health department so that your staff can have the appropriate things taken care of. I believe that that will be ongoing. We can make sure of that. Secondly, we can definitely work towards a partnership to get you a car within our city system that you will of course have the final say of whether or not that car is adequate. And I think that should happen immediately. I don't think it should be long drawn out. And then as we move forward, we will look at the budget to try to solve some of the other problems. But partnership is key. Whether we like each other or not, whether we get along or not, I expect to see partnership take place. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Vice.
I would,
Okay,
just
Alderman Carr, you have something to add before we?
yeah, just that, Kim, if you call over, sure they'll send all that stuff because it was slow in getting there and now they have extra, because I know we're also giving it to small businesses, gloves and masks. And I'm sure if you call over, that they would supply your office with plenty of masks and gloves, keeping in mind that they more or less just came available in the last, say, week or two. I do plan, and I'll send something to you, hopefully within the next week or two, to have a public safety meeting. I know that's not to be discussed here. And it's my understanding that we're going to try to find the 220,000, see if there's a car available somewhere else, and you can work with everything else. I just want to make sure that my understanding is correct, because I will help look for the 220,000.
And can I just clarify something, Alderman, and thank you for that. I just want to say, when we've continued to work throughout the COVID-19 lockdown. So we have people who work remotely as well as come into the office because there's different parts of our office that cannot be done remotely. So we needed this equipment prior. So when people are talking about it just a couple of weeks, so I've purchased equipment for people to feel safe because there's a lot of issues with people asking people to come in to a building, even if there's limited people. We've purposely staggered schedules so we make sure we have the appropriate amount of people versus the CDC guidelines of how we practice social distancing. We've done those things. So we've spent those out of our pocket currently just for the people we have to have in the office. But I'm preparing for when we have to come back and have everyone as well as witnesses and victims. So I will, like you said, work with the health department. I'm not saying that I did not reach out to the health department and I want to reach out to other people. But when I've talked to many different people, they've said that it's limited and it's based off of the adequate needs. And I'm just saying our office is kind of not looked at as the adequate needs spot. And so we have to keep our voices out there pushing for appropriate PPE. So this is not saying that people are not helping or I'm not working with individuals. I am, but at the same time, I have to advocate for purchasing those out of my budget because if I can't wait on these services for other people, I have to make sure my people are safe. So I just want to clarify that I am working with everybody and I'm making sure that we do the right things and make sure we protect people because people are afraid.
So it seems like somehow my thing was crashed. Let's see something if I can get.
That's the internet of the city. That's why we need upgraded info.
No, somebody.
I believe Alderman Boyd might have pushed a button, but we still have. We still have.
That's why I need that $220,000. I appreciate that. You see it, right?
Okay, now that's better. So no, what I'm going to say is we have our conference call with the mayor and Dr. Eccles tonight, and I will ask that question.
Okay.
To make sure that you're getting whatever is appropriate as far as protecting your office and people coming in. That should be happening already.
I think.
And all right. Thank you. And I'll stop it there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay. In closing, a couple of things I've heard through this, Madam Circuit Attorney, and maybe it's possible. I keep hearing that there's people who move up and move around, so your positions are fluid. I don't know, and I'm speaking probably for next year's budget because I'll be very honest with you. I'm highly disappointed to open this meeting with a statement of defense as opposed to we're here to help. We are elected officials. This is supposed to be our part-time job. We take our time and we're dedicating we're here because we care about the city. I'm sure that's why you're in office also. But this is a Ways and Means hearing. All we care about is trying to find you the things that you're asking for to try and help you do your job. So out of respect for these folks who are giving, we're paid, so they say, time and efforts, but our energies, if, to have direct numbers, to have the things in front of us so we can proceed with these meetings, because right now we're running late into the sheriff's time. The sheriff was nice enough to accommodate by switching for Europe. This is a Ways and Means here. We're not here to do anything but try and help you. That's our job, to try and make the city run better, to try and protect our citizens, try to give them everything we can. That's why I've been in office for the last 18 years, because this is where I grew up and this is most important to me. So we're not here to fight you, we're here to help. The way this meeting started, I almost found disrespectful to the members of this board. Because this is not why we're here. We're not here to do anything but try and help the city. So I would, and in the future of these meetings, something I would like to have for next year, if your fluid situation is there a way, I would ask you or your staff to have numbers for us, and also if positions are fluid, who's been promoted, this person had this job for 6 months, he moved up. These are things that we would like to have before so we could help you in the future. This is all about us helping make the city of St. Louis be a better place. That's why all of us are here. We respect the offices we have. We respect your office. We want everything to be done properly. So I thank you again for your time and your efforts. If there's any information that you can get us, we're going to start our add, subtract, the exact numbers. If you can get us by email or somehow by tomorrow when we start this process, if any of these numbers are off, we would like exact numbers. We want to do our job. So please help us do our job so we can help you do yours.
And Chairman Vollmer, just to say, no, without trying to be disrespectful to the community, as you know, I usually, when I came before, I was explaining certain things, and that's what I thought you wanted to explanation. We had the budget in front of us, but I'm not in front of the budget, and my first assistant did a good job of trying to get those things. And so, you know, I think that we're not trying to fight. We know you guys are doing a good job. I appreciate each and every one of the members on this committee, but, you know, at the same time, I want to make sure that we advocate, and this is not to be disrespectful. This was to really explain, because a lot of times I'm asked for the explanation. So sorry if we weren't giving you the numbers, but you know, we did give those numbers to you, and it's no disrespect to you or anybody on the committee. We appreciate you. We appreciate the suggestions, and we want to work with everybody because, as you know, I'm concerned about the city too. I've lived here all my life, and I understand that we have tough challenges, and I know you guys have a hard job, but I understand that, you know, there's a lot of misinformation that is put out there, and a lot of times I have to clear that up, and I thank you for the opportunity. Sorry we had a rough start, but there's no disrespect to you to anybody else. So I want to apologize if anybody thought I was disrespectful, but it's about the community and the people and advocating for positions in my office, as well as the future people who want to come to my office. So I thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you very much, madam. You and your staff are excused, and I will speak to the members of the committee now. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I have a procedural question.
Yes.
If I could. So obviously we usually sit around the table and pass back and forth, and it's got to be in the proper form, the cuts and the putbacks.
Yeah, Gerard is emailing those to you.
Now, okay, so
you
want us to email?
I've received mine already.
Okay.
And that's starting tomorrow. So
Right.
you will have those. I got mine today already from Gerard. It's a nice little sheet. I printed off. Even I can understand how to do that, so I'm sure we all can. But,
well, and I'm pretty sure if we ask them to draw it up, they will. So where do you want, I mean, do you want us to email these back to you so you have them?
We'll work on that tomorrow. Right now, what I'm trying to do is, I'm sure the sheriff's waiting, but I'm sure we all need like a 10-minute break, 15-minute break to stand up, stretch our legs. This one a little longer than usual. So if we could, SLTV, what time we have? It is 11:38. Maybe come back at in about 10 minutes. 11:48. Is that good for everybody? All right. Thank you very much. We'll just put ourselves on hold and stretch your legs and return your coffee. Thank you. But anyhow, we are all back. We will now, Sheriff, thank you so much for deferring your time. First of all, to let the circuit attorney go first. We appreciate you being so kind.
That's okay.
With that, you may proceed and let us know what we can do for you.
Okay, well, first of all, let me say hello to everybody. Glad to see you, and glad to see that everybody is safe and healthy and no virus stuff and all that good stuff, right?
Yes,
everybody
sir.
Hear me? Okay, thank you. Then secondly, I want to thank all of the aldermen. You supported me and my staff getting a bonus, especially John Muhammad. Alderman John Muhammad, I thank you so much. Love you dearly. You're a good man.
Hey, thank you so much, Sheriff. I appreciate you and your leadership for the city of St. Louis.
Yes. So now my requests have been the same that I've had for the last 3 years. This is year number 4. You know, we started off asking for more employees and money for training. And so, you know, my first year as the sheriff, the city cut my budget by $600,000 and my staff by $5,000. My second year, the city took all of my training money. We asked for $150,000. We got none of that, and they cut me by $2,000. And so since I've been in office, I've been trying to add to my staff and get a little money for training. With the last budget period that we've just gone through, I asked for 5 more employees that would have taken me up to actually 6 that would have taken me up to 171. Right now, I'm allotted 165. We only have 159. We haven't been able to hire what we need. We've been wrestling with that issue part of that's due to the COVID, but we're right now at 159. We were hoping with this budget period that we would get 100 up to 171. The assessment that I've made and my staff since I've been in office, we really need 180 deputies to run the sheriff department like it needs to be ran. And I told the citizens that elected me as sheriff that we would make it a more efficient, more effective place and a safer place. I think we've done real good in keeping the courts safe. Remember through 2017 civil unrest, we had no incidents in the building. We went through the very precarious trial with Judge Greiden, with Governor Greiden 2 years ago, and now here we are with the pandemic. And I think we've adhered to all of the court orders that we've had to adhere to. We followed the instructions of the Supreme Court judge and our presiding judge, and we followed all the instructions. We've kept the building fairly safe, even though we've had 4 of our deputies come down with the actual coronavirus, but everybody is safe and sound today. I would hope that I could get those added deputies. If I could get 5 more to take me up to 171, I know it would be impossible. No need asking for the 180. And then we dropped down from asking for 150,000 my first year to my second year asked for 140,000 for training. And then this past budgetary period, we only asked for 75. And of course, we got our budget back this time, and we got only $10,000 for training, which we shoot that up at the range, which we have to do firearm training, and that 10,000 is gone in no time. So that's all we've been given for training. And when you talk about money for training, we really need to look at training our folks in case we have to deal with an active shooter coming in the building. We need training on taser training. We need first aid training, CPR training. These are all things that we hope that we could have, during my tenure, that we could work toward. And so we've been asking for money to do these things over and over and over, but we don't seem to be able to get anywhere. I know that the pandemic is going to really cause the city some financial problems this year. So here I am. All I can do is say, hey, I'm continually asking for the personnel that I need to run the sheriff's department in a safe, effective manner that the citizens of St. Louis would feel safe when they come to the courthouse. We are doing other things these days, and the reason why we need more employees. I think all of you know that the city of St. Louis is providing security at the homeless shelters that the city has opened up. I don't know if you all knew that, but I'm doing the security at the 2 homeless shelters. We're also doing security on Metrolink. We've moved beyond the courthouse, the 2 court buildings during this pandemic. We were also out on the street delivering the notices for the health department, and we've continued. We have basically continued to work every day in spite of the virus. We've had tasks that we've had to perform. We still have when we go out to orders of protection. That's what I was trying to ex partes. We still have ex partes, and the orders of protection have actually increased during the pandemic. And so we've been at work, and of course, I don't think any of you have been over here to the courthouse, but we still have our staff, and we're under court orders to only let people in the building who have masks and who have a order from the presiding judge to come in. But we are here. The sheriff himself has actually been out in the field serving papers and those kind of things because we've had to quarantine a couple of different times, which really put us at a different disadvantage. And so 30 people at one time we had to quarantine, 16 people the second time, and then today as we speak we have 6 people that are quarantined. So the sheriff himself has been out doing a lot of the work that needs to get done. But again, not to just to keep talking on and on. I need personnel. I need money for training. So that's basically all I have to ask you for, and I'll see what you got to say.
All right, Sheriff, thank you very, very much. We'll open up with Madam Vice. Marlene, would you care any questions or comments of the Sheriff's Department?
At this moment, I don't. I'll look at the numbers that are requested for those 2 main categories that were mentioned to see what we can do. I also will take the liberty and look at some of the other partnerships that we have where some of that training could be done without us paying. So it's important. It needs to be done. We do have a small window because I don't think it'll be any way soon that we'll be back in the courts and we can get this taken care of. Also, Mr. Chairman, as we move forward, everything that we do from this point on has to be done in partnership. A lot of the people have not been paying attention to the funds that are coming in for COVID. And a lot of the things we've talked about, most especially emergency preparedness, there are funds there that could be used if we talk to each other and make sure that we understand how those funds can be used. Other than that, I just wanted to remind you before we end this meeting that I would like to schedule a public hearing for this Saturday. So that's all for me, sir. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Madam Vice. Yes, we typically have a public meeting. We had one last year, and Saturdays, as we know, are the best time, and I believe you'll be handling it for us as we did last year. Thank you very much for reminding us.
You're welcome, sir.
The time and place announced. All right. Alderman Vaccaro.
Yes.
Any questions of the sheriff?
Sheriff, you say you got guys out sick right now with COVID, so I guess they'll return. Was that guys that were out serving papers or something, or how? I mean, or is that guys that were working in the courthouse? And then someone told me that now the city marshals have COVID, and that now we got private security working the headquarters for the police department. And you were saying that you're doing all that. I'm just curious.
I can't answer that last part. I don't know what the police department is doing. We have had 4 people to test positive for the virus. 2 of those were outside service guys, so we're not sure exactly where they might have picked up the virus. 2 of the other 2 people did work inside the courthouse, and like we said, all of those people that they came in contact with were quarantined, and we went through the proper channels and talking with Dr. Eccles, the health department, and followed all the guidelines and everything that we needed to do.
Okay, and Joe, I apologize. That's a little off the subject, but certainly piqued my curiosity. And I know you eliminated all the lower rank guys, which I had talked to you about even last year, because my concerns was by giving everybody a higher ranking, that it would definitely impact your budget, and you felt you could deal with it. You felt there was plenty there to deal with. So I know that became an issue. I guess my question, how many employees do you have right now?
We have 159.
And what is your full, excuse me, what is your full capacity?
Right now, I'm budgeted for 165.
165?
Yes.
Okay. And again, and the same question I'm asking everybody, keeping in mind the budget being as critical as it is, the only way to get anything in your department is to cut from another department. We don't have the opportunity to add to your department unless we cut from another department. They even in this budget took all the ward capital out. It's all the aldermen, which I'm fighting to restore. Can you work within the budget you have, or is there something that's absolutely critical? I mean, critical to your needs, or can you survive this year? Keeping in mind, every department's been cut. And in order for us to add to yours, we have to go somewhere else and cut. And certainly, you know, you don't want us to cut from your department to give to the prosecutor, who said that they have critical needs. And I know Alderwoman Murphy asked the question, well, what department do you want us to cut from? But even that aside, and not meanness or anything.
Well, I can answer that question for you,
Yes.
Alderman. Yeah, that question was asked a couple of by Alderman Murphy, but I can answer that. I think that we were involved in transporting federal prisoners, and I think you all have heard you've heard this. And we just looked on the budget to see where public safety has asked for 12 more employees so that they can transport those federal prisoners. And we said last year, one, we think it's illegal for them to be transporting federal prisoners, first of all. And then two, we asked for only 4 more employees so that we could continue to do that work of transporting federal prisoners. Now, you know,
Sheriff, not to cut you off, but if I remember, there was basically a letter that you sent saying we're not going to transport them, basically holding the city hostage, saying if we don't get this money, I can get the letter, I save everything. But it basically said, well, let me finish and then you can answer, please. It basically said that you're going to quit transporting federal prisoners. And the answer from, I believe, was the mayor's office was, okay, so what, we'll have the marshals do it. We can't sit there and be held hostage to threats or saying we're not going to do something. Our budgets are tight every year. We barely get, this year especially, even that they, like I said, they've cut out ward capital. The fire department has cuts $6.5 million in the fire department for breathing apparatuses that are critical for these guys going into fires now. They're adequate. So I'm just simply asking the budget the way it is. I'm not criticizing, I'm not picking. The budget the way it is with the 165 deputies. And I know everybody got their raises and everybody got their bonuses. Can you survive? Or is there something so critical that you can't survive on?
Joe Vaccaro, I can survive. I can survive because that's what I do. We started out my first year at $90,000 in the red and short-staffed, and we survived. I'm just saying to all of my friends, all of my aldermen, that over the years, you've cut and you've cut and you've cut the sheriff department. We are at the bone. At some point, something's going to happen because we're not operating in a safe manner to where we're staffing the sheriff department at the level that it needs to be staffed. Now, let me address this other issue that you want to talk about me holding somebody hostage, and I take offense to that because we asked, Jimmy Edwards came to me and asked me would I be his partner in transporting federal prisoners. We already had the contract to transport the federal prisoners. Our contract was 20 years old. Murphy set that contract up 20 years ago. We've always transported federal prisoners, but Jimmy Edwards come to me and say, hey, we're going to house and transport federal prisoners, and I'm going to draw up a new contract. I need a partner. I say, okay, I'll be your partner. he drew up the contract and came back to you guys saying that he's gonna house federal prisoners. They've made the city, somebody has made almost $8 million off of that transportation of federal prisoners, and it wasn't the sheriff, and it was my job, and it's illegal for the correctional officers to be transporting those federal prisoners. We got that straight from the city attorneys, but you drew up the contract to let Jimmy Edwards have 70% of that money, and the sheriff. If I had got my cut of that money from transporting federal prisoners, we wouldn't even be talking about the sheriff asking anybody for anything. But because I was cut, hold on, let me finish. You didn't give me anything for Proposition P. I'm part of public safety, and I didn't get one penny for Proposition P. Over the 3 years I've been here, I haven't gotten any help other than Mr. Alderman Muhammad and you guys helping me just the other day with that bonus. I thank you so much for that. But I haven't gotten any help from the city to make the sheriff department a better department. And Alderman Vollmer, you just said the city, that we should be all together to make the city a better place. That's all I ever wanted to do, was make the sheriff department a better department so we could make the city a safer place. Jimmy Edwards cheated me out of the transportation of transporting federal prisoners. We could have been getting part of that money right now, and the sheriff wouldn't be asking anybody for any money.
But you,
so don't talk about I held the city hostage.
But you said
don't
you would
say
not.
I held the city hostage, because I wrote Jimmy Edwards and the mayor, and I think the board of aldermen, a letter saying that if we didn't get the bodies we needed to transport federal prisoners, we were going to stop the transportation.
Right.
I didn't hold anybody
Okay.
hostage.
Joe, give me a second here. Okay. We're getting off on a tangent here between things he said, she said, and
No. But I'm
hearing the word cheat, hearing the word that. We're getting off topic for a meeting. We're here to talk about numbers. Okay, we're here to see what we can do. Okay,
that wasn't the realm
we've
of this.
established the fact. We've established the fact that there's some ill feelings about the transporting of prisoners, and that's it. What we're trying to do is work on this year's budget. We can dig up the past for the next 6 weeks, but we have a meeting before us to perform. So let's stick within that. Do you have any further comments about what he's proposing today?
I want to finish.
Let's leave the other thing alone. Let's move forward.
So when I asked where would you find the cuts, that's why this was brought up, which is in the realm of this meeting. He said you can cut it from the marshals. I was simply answering that question as to why that is going to the marshals. That's what that's about.
I understand. Someone please mute your phone. Thank you.
No,
that's fine. We've established all that, so we have that point.
Okay.
Well made.
So my question is simply, is there any critical?
Please mute your phone. We understood that.
It's my iPad. I'm on all things going at the same time. My question is, Sheriff, and I think you answered it.
He did. I believe he did answer it. Say he could cut it to the bone. He could do whatever he could. Yes.
He could.
Is there another question you have, Joe? That question's been answered, sir.
No, I just want to make sure, because if there's nothing, then I'm not going to worry about trying to figure out how to get more money in there.
I believe the sheriff has answered your questions. Okay. If there's nothing further, we'll move on.
No, I'll just mute and just listen. Apparently.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Alderman Howard. Any questions or comments of the sheriff's department?
Yes. Good afternoon, Sheriff.
Good afternoon.
How much more would you need? You said you needed how many positions? I got a little distracted here. You're asking for, you requested, let's see here. How many did you request this year? I'm sorry. I
requested 6 more in this current budget, and the judges went along with me in asking for 6 more. That would take my staffing up to 171. And I asked for $75,000, way down from what I've asked 2 previous years. I've asked for $75,000 for training. And the judges signed off on that.
Okay. So you asked for the $75,000 additional for training and for how many more positions? I'm sorry. 3 more positions? 6 more positions.
6 more.
And that would go, those would be entry level positions, right?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. All right. That's all I need. Thank you so much for coming here today.
All right, thank you,
That's all
Alderwoman.
I have, Chairman.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Alderman.
much. We'll move on to Alderwoman Hubbard.
No questions.
All right, thank you very much. Alderwoman Murphy. Beth, you need to unmute, babe. Beth, you're on mute.
I thought you unmuted me.
No, they don't give me all that power.
Darn. I don't have any questions. I said they were asking, and I wanted to know the amount of, and I was also wondering, like Alderwoman Davis said, if some of that training could be combined with some other department, even police department, something, the marshals, everybody's being trained, even as teachers, we were trained for, for these emergency situations that happen in public buildings all the time. Perhaps that could be combined some way, I'm hoping. And that's all. The rest was asked and answered. I will go over it. Thank you, Sheriff.
No,
All right.
Alderman,
Go ahead, Sheriff.
That's a great question. And yes, we're trying to work with as many folks as we can to get our job done. And we've partnered with the St. Louis Fire Department. They are actually going to, if we can get the funding, they are going to actually do some of the training for us. They're going to train my staff. So I've talked to the chief. He said there is a cost for first aid training and all of that, but they will give me that training at a much cheaper rate than we can get from Red Cross.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Spencer. Press your mute button. There you go.
I had it unmuted. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Sheriff, for being here today. It looks like, okay, so your budget is, I would say, like 1%, a couple shaved off from last year. So, and it looks like a couple of those deputy sheriffs were cut. I'm a little bit confused about this contract to transport federal prisoners. You said that you were cut out of $8 million. Can you walk me through that?
No.
Yes.
What's the $8 million, Sheriff?
No.
Alderman, that's the guesstimation as to how much the city made last year off of the transportation of housing and transporting federal prisoners.
Okay. Housing and transit. Okay.
Right. Housing and transportation. We think the city, that's just a guesstimation, and that guesstimation came from the marshal himself, between $8 and $9 million, could be even more than that, on housing and transporting federal prisoners. They're paying, the feds are paying the city of St. Louis somewhere close to about $90 to $100 per prisoner. And we have about 252, 53 prisoners in the Justice Center today as we speak.
We have a little over 200. But so the sheriff's office historically has been involved not in housing those prisoners, but transporting them. Is that correct?
We are the only entity that transport both state and federal prisoners in the city of St. Louis up until just recently. Okay.
But the sheriff's office is involved in transportation, not housing. I'm sorry, Sheriff. I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the sheriff's office historically has been involved in the transit of those federal prisoners. Does the sheriff's office then get a percentage, or how has that relationship looked prior to this year?
Well, prior to this year, we would always send the feds a bill and they would pay us, and then that money would go right to the city. We never saw one penny of that money. Unlike what we understand is going on now, the Department of Public Safety is getting a cut of that money to do whatever they wanted to do with it. My understanding is that you guys signed a bill for the city to get 30%, Department of Public Safety gets 70%. And all I'm saying is, Alderman, if the sheriff had been included because he was doing half of the work of the transporting, if I had got 10% of that and everybody else cut it up the way, we wouldn't be having a conversation right now.
Okay, Sheriff, I'm sorry. I realize I'm asking questions, but you know, we're here to help. I'm here to help.
Yes.
I'm here to first and foremost understand what's going on here. So this is a bit of a confusing subject matter for all of us. I'll speak for myself. It's confusing for me. So exactly what.
Okay.
So
you went to mute. You went to mute. I couldn't hear you.
Oh goodness. Well, that wasn't.
You're back here. You're fine.
Administrative error. Well, so I'll speak for myself and say this is a bit of a confusing situation. So historically, you're saying the sheriff's office hasn't received a cut of that. It went directly to the general fund?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you're arguing to have what back in place? It sounds like you didn't get any funding before. Are you
right?
Positions back in your budget to be able to transport those prisoners? Or what is the direct ask, since we're not the director of public safety and making that contract? What is the ask from the Ways and Means Committee, Sheriff?
Well, what I'm saying, Cara, is that deal never should have took place without the sheriff. The sheriff always was the transporter of prisoners. And if a deal was going to be cut between the city and the federal government for transporting prisoners, the sheriff should have been included in that. And my understanding is that when Jimmy Edwards came to the city, he presented it as simply a housing issue, not a housing and transportation issue. So now this is my understanding, is that public safety gets 70% of that money. City gets 30% of that money. We're talking about that $8 million. Sheriff got nothing. Plus, they took the job from me, as somebody was trying to say that I refused to transport them. No, I did not. I wrote a letter to the mayor and to Jimmy Edwards, and even to the marshal himself, at the marshal's behest of me writing a letter explaining to them that if I didn't get the support for deputies that I needed to do that job, look, our
Sheriff, I don't want to interrupt. I don't mean to cut you off here, but I want to make sure we do as efficiently as possible. So we are not the entity that made that decision. Obviously, we're not the director of public safety, and I don't believe he's on the call today, although he was on our call yesterday. It sounds like there's a dispute between the sheriff's office and the director of public safety, but we are in charge of the budget. So what is the ask on the budget side of that equation? Does the sheriff's office still participate in the transit of those prisoners, or is that handled by the police department now entirely?
Well, first of all, Cara, there is no dispute. I'm just trying to give you guys as much information so you can make as intelligent decision about what you need to do for me as possible. You guys got to have all the information, and I wish you would be patient enough to let me tell the whole story so you'll have the whole story. I'm not trying to hide nothing from anybody, and I'm not.
And Sheriff, we appreciate the history, but we just need to move forward with this budget today. So that's for another time. We're kind of getting off that. We need to know what I believe the question, Alderman Spencer, and I, the dollar amount that you're proposing for the 5 more employees. What does that come to? And then the others, I believe that's the dollar amount you're asking for, whatever those 5 more employees would cost. Is that correct, Carol?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I was looking for was whether or not the sheriff's office is still transporting those.
No, they are not.
Okay, so then the police department is handling that. So then okay. So
the sheriff's department's not doing it. So that as far as being germane to this budget, the money he's asking for is for more employees currently for 5 more positions, I believe.
Okay, and in theory, that would be to put that function back in the sheriff's office?
I don't believe that's just, no, I don't believe it's just to do that function. I just believe it's to have more employees to cover the courts and to cover their functions currently. It's not to add that function back.
Okay.
All right. The employees I'm asking for is for the support of the courts, not for the transportation. When all that came up, when somebody asked about where would I get the money to do what, and that's how all of this transportation stuff, I think the money is there, could have been coming to the sheriff department, and my budget probably would have been solved. But now the 6 employees that I'm asking for, that's to continue the support of the courts. And with the new changes that we've had from the Supreme Court and with the courts and the prisons and stuff, we need those additional bodies to make sure the court functions can be carried out efficiently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Chair, for helping clarify. I think that does it for me. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Alderman. Alderman Muhammad, any questions of the sheriff?
In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, I will reserve my questions for the sheriff directly. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. And Alderman Oldenburg, are we still with us?
I am. I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Boyd, are you amongst us? Alderwoman Boyd? All right, we can come back to her if she shows up. Alderman Clark Hubbard, I see you there. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No question.
All right. Alderwoman Boyd, I see you with us again. Would you have any questions of the sheriff?
No questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nice echo effect on your microphone there. Okay. All right, Sheriff. And we're here to do the nuts and bolts today. So 5 employees, is there an approximate dollar amount for those 5 employees that we could have? Or is there, I'm not sure the salaries.
I don't have those numbers. I'm sorry.
What's the starting? What's the salary of a starting sheriff?
The starting salary for a sheriff deputy is $32,600.
Okay, so 5 times 32.6. Guys, you all got calculators, do the math. That's what we're asking for. All right, Sheriff, I thank you for your time and for your service. And I appreciate you once again, being gracious enough to let the circuit attorney go first and for deferring your time. Thank you so much, sir. You are now excused, and we all.
Brother Chairman, wait, before you go, we tried to move stuff to the capital budget so that we wouldn't have this stress on the regular budget. Can anybody tell me anything about what's going on with that movement to the capital budget?
Believe me, Alderman Carl has been working hard on it, but we have no answers at this point. Everything we're doing is very fluid. I believe that Paul Payne is actually still waiting on another report out of Jeff City that could basically change everything we've had before us also right now. So the numbers, this is, again, one of the most topsy-turvy budget situations in a long time, because even the facts we're dealing with now could change based on another report that will be coming in shortly. So we're just trying to do the best with it, and we appreciate you, trying to work with us, and we're trying to work with you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, you can be excused, and we will now have the members talk amongst ourselves. Alderwoman Davis, any questions or comments?
No, I believe one thing we all know is that this budget is challenging. I think that we still need to do some additional homework on our part to find out where the funds are, and most especially the emergency funds, can be used to supplement some of these asks.
Okay.
And we also
Were you
need
surprised
to
that
make
the Prop P funds weren't being used by the sheriff? Isn't he privy to
well,
those?
I'm not going to say anything because the last 2 years they haven't been used properly by several departments,
Okay.
and the money comes back. That's not our problem.
Okay.
If a department does not budget and allocate their funds, and they come back to me next year, I don't have an additional $1 million for you. You had money. You should have used it. So I'm sorry, I can't have any sympathy there.
Okay, all right. I'm just wondering if there's any way to educate these departments about using Prop P money as what needs to be done, it sounds like.
And actually, I think there needs to be some oversight, quarterly reports, and so that they don't end up in this position again. This is the 3rd year of this. So
Okay.
it needs to be a better system.
All right, thank you. And you'll, while I have you here, you're gonna schedule and announce a public hearing on Saturday, is that correct?
I'd like to schedule it for 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. We will use the Zoom, of course, and I hope that as many members of the committee can be present for that, to listen to the public. We're not there to criticize their ideas or thoughts. We're there to listen and gain additional concerns.
All right, thank you so much, Madam Chief Vice. Thank you for your time today. Okay, Alderman Vaccaro, any questions or comments before we close the meeting today?
Well, comments mostly.
All right.
I just want to share my thoughts. The 220,000 does seem critical. And so I'm going to ask Gerard to send over. Now, they won't have numbers as to whether it's Amendment 1, 2, or 3. I assume you're going to do that as you hear.
Well, okay, you're talking about.
Mr. Chair, is this for the circuit attorney?
Adds or tracks already.
Right. Well, I'm just saying what my thoughts are.
Okay, yeah, with that procedure will take place. Gerard, again, email me, and all the members of the committee should be emailed your ads and track. Yeah, so you'll be getting those.
I understand.
And to get them back to me, I'll probably take a central point, and we'll have them all go back to Gerard Holland's office, and Gerard can then he and I can go over. I think it's best. He's a little more technically capable than I am. Well, we'll go over that tomorrow at the end of that meeting. With that's your question.
No, well, sort of. I mean, I'm just going to let Gerard know what my cuts and putbacks are, so he can have them pre-filled out. Because otherwise, he's going to I'll have to download the paperwork, figure a way to upload it or fax it or do whatever.
I did it from my phone. I basically just printed it off my telephone. But
I understand. So I could print the form.
Yeah. Fill it out, and then you can just scan it back to Gerard. I believe we need to have a paper.
Not everybody has the ability to scan. I will admit I do.
Okay. But, all right. We'll jump off that bridge tomorrow. But we're talking about just today. This seemed to.
Well, and today, and talking about today, unless somebody else, has a comment. I thought that the circuit attorney, the 220,000 was critical.
Okay, we're just talking about not procedures of dollars, just that how things are going. But if there's any comments like the Prop P money, seems like that's not being used properly. It seems like there could be some better ways to do some of these things for these offices. But I'm just looking for general commentary. If there's anything, we're not looking.
We're not looking for conclusions.
We'll get to the nuts and bolts.
No, there are no conclusions today about funding.
I'm not. These were legitimate questions about procedure.
But yeah, but we'll do the procedure tomorrow. We do have the treasurer's office coming in. That shouldn't take that long tomorrow. And after that, then we'll go and we'll start our first round of cuts. And then we will not be finishing those. Again, commentary tomorrow. We'll finish those on Tuesday because we do have the public, and the public input will, I believe, be pertinent to all of us. So we don't want to finalize anything until we hear from the public. I might not be there Saturday. Saturday's a little hectic for me. Madam Vice will probably be running the meeting for us that day. But in general, if anybody has a comment or question before we close, raise your hand. Okay, Alderman Howard. Carol, you have to unmute.
Sorry.
Okay.
There's so much going on. So when will we know about Saturday? I guess the
Saturday 10 a.m.
It's
Saturday 10 a.m. and it's going to be Zoom. You'll be sent the invitation.
Okay. You said at a designated place and time, and I'm like, where are we going? Okay.
I'm still dealing. My mind is still not COVID friendly.
I know. It's confusing. Okay. All right. That's all I needed to know if I had to be somewhere. Okay. All right. Thank you. I just
wherever you're at, where you should be.
In front of my computer. Okay. That's right. Where I need to be. Got it. Thank you so much.
Any other questions or comments before we? All right. With that, we will make a motion to excuse all aldermen not present for necessary absence.
So moved.
Second, previous roll.
Previous roll.
All right. Motion to adjourn till tomorrow at 10 a.m. Second. I'll second my own thing. How's that? All right. Thank you all for your time and efforts. I know it's
Adios.
strenuous. All right, see you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m.
Thank you.